苦しい。
苦しい。I think people would think I'm weird.
かゆい、ここら辺が。
It's actually uncomfortable not to say anything.
そこだよね。とても苦しいです。I'm glad this is clear now. すっきり。
Welcome to the Lost in Japanglish channel, delivered to you in a bilingual format in English and Japanese.
ロスジャパチャンネルへようこそ。日本語と英語のバイリンガル形式でお送りしています。
I'm Chieko.
そしてやっこです。
And today we are talking about translations that we get asked about that don't have good translations.
そう。本当にこれはね、毎日じゃないかもしれないけど、よく悩むところ。
So specifically, we're going to be talking about English phrases where we are asked for the Japanese translation. So the first one that I always get asked is, how do you say bless you?
はい。これはもうなんかナンバーワン、ツー、スリーのどっかに入るよね、絶対に。これはね、I think I would say お大事に but it's not the same thing, right?
Right. Because お大事に means like take care of yourself.
いや。bless you ってでもみんな言ってるんだよね、そっちでは。
Yes. So here's what I think is the fundamental difference is you hear someone sneeze here in the United States, it's actually uncomfortable not to say anything.
あ、そこだよね。
So we feel compelled to say bless you. それが日本にいるときyou don't know what to say and you're like, I need a translation. Culturally, first and foremost in Japan, I think when someone sneezes, the standard is you don't say anything.
まあ、even if you don't say anything, it's totally fine. Or you can say take care, which is お大事に。
Okay, so here's my question for you.
はい。
You are at work. You're sitting in a conference room with 6 to 8 people. Somebody sneezes. What do you do?
風邪ですかとか、大丈夫ですかとか言ったりするかもしれない。
Okay, so you would interrupt the meeting to say, 大丈夫ですか?
If that person was next to me, I would quietly say, 大丈夫ですか? And if that person was like far away from me in the conference room, maybe I would wait till the conversation ends. まあ、そこではもう忘れてるかもしれないけど。
Because here, in the same scenario, somebody sneezes in the conference room, 4 or 5 people would be like, bless you, bless you, bless you. Like, that's perfectly, like, a lot of people will say it. And the speaker might even be like, oh, bless you, and then just continue on. Because it's such a normal part of our culture. If someone sneezes on the bus or on a train, you'll hear a bunch of people say, bless you.
マジそこまで行くか。それはね、そこまで知らなかった。その会議中にインタラプトしてみんなで bless you, bless you, bless you みたいなのが飛び交うんだ。
Rarely does it happen. I'm trying to think of an example where it's like someone sneezes and people said nothing. That just doesn't happen. Usually somebody, if not multiple people, will say, bless you.
In Japan, no one really talks to you on the train.
Right. I feel like you don't say anything and it's perfectly normal. If an American is sitting on a train and someone sneezes, there's a part of them very likely that's wanting to say, bless you, but doesn't know what to say. Or is uncomfortable with the idea of the appropriate thing is to say nothing.
そうか。じゃあ、ちーちゃんは日本に来たとき、例えば電車に乗ってて、誰かくしゃみしたら、どんな感じになってんの？
I internally say, bless you. I don't say it out loud because I think people would think I'm weird.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, bless you.
なるほど、ヤクもそれ今度から使います。で、もう一つあって、bless you って言われたらなんか返す。
No. Oh, you could say thank you.
Okay. thank you って言わなきゃいけないのかもと思ったから。
I feel like it's polite to say thank you if someone has taken the time to say bless you.
だけどみんなが bless you, bless you とか言ってたら、thank you, thank you なんか言ってらんないよ、ね。
No, you just say thank you once.
Okay. That's interesting. I think in Japanese we would say the most popular way is to say お大事に。
お大事に。
で、ありがとうございますって言って、終わりで。
Yes. I feel like it's a little bit rude almost, though, to say something in some environments in Japan where we would say that here, if that makes sense. So I think that there are times where the appropriate translation is nothing.
おっしゃる通りでございますね。はいはい。I'm glad this is clear now.
But it explains like why we get asked that so much. Because it's so compelling for us to say bless you when people sneeze.
しかもさ、こんなにさ、ちゃんと聞けないんだよ。実際に起きた時も。こんなに時間をとってさ、それってどうなのとか、You can't really discuss it. You don't have time. もう一つよくある質問は、How are you?
Yes.
これは、I still get confused. Do I actually answer the question or do I say something else as a 挨拶?
Okay, so the question is, what is the translation of how are you? So in school, we would learn, o genki desu ka? Right? Like that. I feel like that's what we learn. But in fact, nobody actually says it in that fashion.
No, it's very formal. It's a little too polite, I think. お元気ですか? So if it's
I feel like it's what you write when you write a letter to somebody.
Yeah. I guess we would still write お元気ですか in a letter.
Yes.
テキストだともうやんないかもね。元気と言ったりするね。
So this is another one where I think the direct translation doesn't culturally work, which is why there isn't a perfect translation for how are you.
First, there's no translation. And second, I hear all of this. How are you is not a question that you actually answer. Or how are you is just how are you. It's a greeting. It's just saying hi. So you don't really have to say, 今日はちょっとなんかあんまり気分が乗ってないかなとか、こんなに説明しなくていいって言われることもあるから。
Yes, so it depends on the context, but most of the time, if, I'm coming into a meeting, I'm like, hey, how are you? You're not going to tell me about your sick dog and, what's really going on in your life. Most of the time, it's going to be like, oh, I'm fine. How are you? And that becomes the really casual level of the how are you.
So good to know. なんか、I'm fine. 言わない方がいいとかさ、it's like, it's all over the internet. It's like, really?
So some people believe like you should answer that question if someone's asking, right? So there's different levels. And I think it depends on what the scenario is and who you're talking to. This is where it depends on the situation where someone asks you, how are you? It can be appropriate to say, well, gosh, I'm really tired today because I was up all night. My dog was sick. How are you? Right? So it depends on the situation. But the safest bet, I think, is to say, I'm fine, how are you? Like, just, it depends on if you think they're really asking on how you are doing or if they're just saying it to be polite.
なるほど。だって今日、ちーちゃんとこうポチッとやってコネクトした時も、How are you? ってちーちゃん聞いてくれたんだ。で、どうしようかなと思いながら話してたもんね。
はい。
So, in that situation, 元気would be a good translation. お元気ですか is not what we say, it's what we write. But maybe in a very formal situation, we would say, 久しぶりですね、お元気ですかって言ったりするかもしれない。And in some situations, I think you can actually reply. Those are the translations.
Well, and I think it's also important to note, like, we're going to be super nitpicky here.
Okay.
Genki means, are you well?
Yes.
Right? It's not how are you. So your reply has to be like, oh, I'm not actually doing too well today. It's a little bit of a different question, but I think the reason why it's important is when we say genki, it's even harder, I think, to be like, no, I'm not genki. It feels like even more pressure to be like, genki da yo, and just smooth it over without being like, no, in fact, actually, I'm not genki today.
It's such a sad beginning for a greeting だよね。
Yeah.
そういう意味では、if it's more literal, we do sometimes say どう which is 調子はどう which means how are you だよね。
Yes. I agree with you. I feel like that's a little bit more of an open-ended question.
いや、そう。まあ一応ね、there are really formal ways. お変わりないですかさっきのお元気ですかでもそれ以外思いつかない。
Yeah.
苦しいです。はい。
I don't know that I've ever been asked お変わりないですか
ないと思う。やっこも自分が体験したことあるかっていうと、I know of the way to say it, but I've never used it or probably ever heard it って感じはするね。
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've never heard it directly.
そういうこと、そういうこと。
My question is, if it's not as customary or culturally appropriate to say, 元気?今日調子どう?っていう、because we use how are you almost as a greeting. What is the substitute versus just the direct translation for, hey, how are you?
なるほどね。難しいね。その質問。苦しい。
苦しい。
苦しい。どうだろうね。おはよう。If it's the first time you meet that person in the daytime, I'd say おはよう。Or sometimes even お疲れ。To say hi.
Just as a hello. Yes.
Yes.
So here's the situation is not that you're passing by in the hallway, but you're at a meeting, you arrive and there's one person that's already there. They're not particularly the leader of the meeting. It's your friend Bob. And you're like, hey, Bob, how are you? And you take your seat. You're just having that small chit chat. You're opening it up for chit chat before the meeting.
Got it. それはお疲れ様です。
Period. お疲れ様です。
お疲れ様です。If it's been a while, maybe a month or two, seeing that person, maybe 最近どうですか?
はい。
is maybe the follow-up question that I would.
Okay. How are you lately? Or how are things lately? It's sort of vague, what we're talking about in that scenario.
Exactly. So if I'm broadly asked, how would you say, how are you? Hi, how are you? That is a tough question. But if you make it clear like that.
このシチュエーション。
そう。
はい。Yes, because how are you is like we say that everywhere, anywhere. I'll say that to the cashier, be like, hey, how are you? They might say, hey, how are you? I'll be like, I'm good. How are you doing today? And so that's how we just engage a lot of people. And I think that's why we get asked that question a lot because we use it frequently here.
でも便利だね。誰でもいいんだもんね。シチュエーションで考えなくてもいいっていうのは、レジの人に言わないもんね、何も。
So another one that I get asked a lot is how do you say, have a great day, have a great weekend, have a great holiday as a farewell.
そう、farewell の、もうこれもまたね、とても苦しいです。Because I don't think we really have a way to say that. But when we say goodbye, for one, we can say またね, which is
see you later.
Yeah, see you later. That's what we would say, I think. But what I hear recently is 良い週末を、良い一日を, which is the direct translation.
Yes.
Right? And maybe when I was a child or even in my teens, I would not hear this. 20代、30代ぐらいからは I hear it a lot.
Okay.
なんて言うんだろう, we do use it sometimes.
As a farewell. So meaning, okay, we just wrapped up our meeting at the conference room. And then I would say, 佐藤さん、良い週末を and then leave.
If it's a Friday, I would not be weird out. Or I would say, ありがとうございます。良い週末をって言って別れる。
Okay. Yeah. So maybe the have a great weekend is inappropriate, but maybe not the most appropriate.
Like, I think if you say it, the other person would feel good.
Okay.
それはあると思う. So if you have the time, I think it's totally appropriate to say it nowadays.
Okay.
Yeah. ちらほら聞く.
ちらほら. Okay.
If I'm working from home on a Friday and I'm saying, 今日はちょっとこれで上がりますって言っても, if it's a Friday, I would type in 良い週末を.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that weird to me via text or chat. Feels a little funny, not funny, but it's not as comfortable as like, hey, have a great weekend.
It's not as comfortable. It's not as casual. It's not as comfortable. And I would say don't use it too frequently.
Yeah.
Because then it would kind of start feeling, この人なんかいつもこれ言うよねみたいな感じになるんじゃないかな. It's nice because it said sometimes.
I think we say have a nice day, have a great weekend, have a great holiday, like at the part of departure frequently. Again, even at the cash register, they'll be like, okay, have a nice day, enjoy the rest of your day. You too. So we say a lot here, which is why I think we get asked what is the translation of that frequently.
ちょっと待って, I have a question. その、have a nice day はさ、day は一応 daytime じゃん?
はい。
夜、言ったりすることはあるの?
Yeah, so we would say have a good night. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good night. Okay, okay. 言えるんだね。ナイス
Good
で。
rest of your day. Yep.
ちょっとほっとしました。安心しました。It's like I didn't know until when I can say have a nice day. お昼までは言えるだろうなとか。で、夕方、afternoon、夕方どこら辺でもうそれ言わなくなるのかみたいなのが、I was confused.
Yeah, I feel like once you get to the evenings, you might say, have a good evening, have a good night, or the rest of your day.
For the rest, そうだよね。The rest of
Yeah,
your day は
have a great rest of the day.
すっきりしました。
Yes. And ultimately, I think the reason why there's not great translations is because these are culturally very American and not Japanese. なので、there is no great, exact, precise translation だよね。
その通りでございます。もうね、こういう文化的なものはさ、しょうがないし、でも、ここが面白いところでもあるよね。こういう風に文化が違うんだっていう、kind of realize it or discover it in this way. So, I think that's the fun part.
Okay, well, let's jump to our pop quiz for today's episode.
それではクイズコーナーへ移りましょう。
Okay, Yakko-chan, today I have some slang for you. So there's various ways that we use slang to greet each other, especially amongst friends. We might say, hey, what's up? How's it hanging? What's shaking? We have all these fun ways that we say these goofy things. What is the appropriate response to a slang term like that? If I said, hey, what's up?
appropriate response があるの。ちょっと待って。What's up って聞かれたら、What's up? 同じように答える。ダメ？
That is not wrong.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah. So if I said, hey, what's up? And you were like, hey, what's up? Like, that's totally fine.
じゃ、でもそれが答えではない。
That can be. You could say, not much. What's up with you? Or you could actually share something that's like, oh, I just came back from vacation. You know, I went to Switzerland or whatever. So there's various appropriate responses. So the question can be taken literally or it can be just taken as a greeting.
なるほ
So
ど。
a lot of times it's a question. I might be like, how's it hanging? And you don't actually have to answer that.
いやー、面白いね、そのクイズ。すっきりした。別に、普通にちゃんと答えてもいいし、別に答えなくてもいいっていうのが答えだってことだよね。
はい。
ヤコまだね、what's hanging, what's shaking は聞くけど、知ってるけど、自分からまだ言えないね、恥ずかしく。なんかWhat's shaking? って、ちょっとかゆい、ここら辺が。
はい、はい。I think it's appropriate to say it kind of half-jokingly. Like that's how I tend to say it. Back in the day, there was this whole thing where we'd be like, what's up?
Okay. まあでもあるよね。だって日本でも、Thank you ありがとうございますじゃん。それをさ、あざーすって言う人もいるから、まあね、そういう時代もあるし、なるほど。
But yeah, you could say, I think in humor, you know, kind of like the arigatou gozaimasu. You know how it's trendier to be like, like I would do that out of humor.
でもそうなんだよ。多分、若い子たちも、あざーすとか言って、it's out of humor, but it's funny that we all do the same thing where it's like so short you don't realize it's that word. If you're too old, sometimes you don't recognize it, right? でも、what's up? Hey, what's up? って答えていいのはちょっと知っててよかったです。ありがとうございます。じゃあ、日本語の方に移ります。今日はね、文化でもあり、really hard question かもしれない。
I'm ready.
はい。翻訳、こんにゃくって言ったら何でしょう
So what came to mind is honyaku, like the translation, and konyaku, the food, which is like the...
Konyaku is actually made out of vegetables. Yam, so
it's like reconstituted yam.
It's like a really hard jelly.
Yes, it's like jello texture, almost,
so.
but yams. So when I hear honyaku, konyaku, it makes me feel like not clean translations. Like it's like sort of on the spot, but not really.
That is actually very inspiring. Like, konyaku is actually a product of a certain anime, Doraemon. And so if you don't know it, it's a really hard question.
I mean, I'm somewhat familiar with Doraemon.
でもその翻訳こんにゃくなんかこう、あ、そっちの方がいいかもしれないってちょっと今思っちゃった。But But honyak konyak is something that comes up in Doraemon, which is a very, very popular anime in Japan. And for people who don't know, Doraemon is a blue robot cat that has a magic pocket where he takes out all these magic tools that helps people. And honyak konyaku is one of them. And he goes, honyak konyaku! And then if you eat it, you can say all the languages in the world.
Okay, so it's a konyaku that's like a universal translator when you eat it.
Yes.
You can speak all the language. Wow. How amazing would that be? 欲しいね。
I would love... 欲しいの、欲しいの。If we hear honyak konyaku, I think that is the thing that most Japanese would think of. Because it's so popular. Yeah. っていうものでしたが、ちーちゃんのあの発想はね、すごいちょっと面白かったので。
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Lost in Japanglish YouTube channel here. And we get some challenging translations today, so we'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you like to say? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this kind of discussion, please give us a like, please give us a follow, and help us promote our channel. We'd appreciate it very much.
はい。そうです。結構今日よく聞くやつだけど、ここまでじっくり話すチャンスってなかなかないと思うんですよね。なので、そういう話ができたのは良かったかなと思うんですけど、まだまだ足りないと思う方もいらっしゃるかもしれません。ぜひお便りでもコメントでもいただけると嬉しいです。それでは今日もご視聴ありがとうございました。また次回会いましょう。
バイバイ。
バイバイ。